ready to be shocked. Oh my gosh, my head is still reeling from this. Well, Ross Coulthart, with a little help from Chris Mellon, is now saying that the Air Force is not being entirely forthcoming on UFOs. Can you imagine that? I kid. Get in here. This is Jack with Cosmic Road. Please hit like, please subscribe, and hit the bell to be notified of future videos. Please share this video on social media. And please join me on Facebook and Twitter. Links are below. And please comment on the story as I'm going through it. All right, I'm having a little fun here. The idea of the Air Force actually being cooperative and sharing what they know about UFOs would be a big deal, right? But Ross and Chris have some really, really good points, and something that I had never heard before, and I'll let him speak for himself on this, and then I'll comment on it. But I imagine this is probably a wrinkle that many of you are unaware of, too. And this is potentially huge. Well, I mean, it is huge. So let's just get right into it. Let me share you what Ross says, and then I'll share my thoughts on it. Here goes.
Now, Bryce, the thing that I want to emphasize, I'm going to drop a massive hint here. There's something I know. There is major dissent. I'm going to say it again. There is major dissent between the Biden White House and the Pentagon right now about the failure by different agencies in the military to tell the truth. And I just want to point you all to some statements that Christopher Mellon, in his recent statement released 24 hours ago. Chris Mellon basically says that at the time of the 2004 Nimitz incident, US Air Force F-22s were operating in the same training areas as the Navy aviators who were seeing and reporting these objects. Yet despite having superior sensor systems, these US Air Force pilots did not report the U.A.P. that must have been detected by their radars. And he actually goes on to say the preliminary assessment provided to Congress was almost completely devoid of information from the US Air Force, despite the fact that the Air Force has far more aircraft and sensor systems than the Navy, as well as the responsibility for supporting NORAD. It is my understanding that NORAD did not include in the ODNI report any of the thousands of uncorrelated targets that its radars identify each year over North America. And he goes on to make the point that, yes, sure, a lot of those uncorrelated targets might be clutter. But the point is, there's two issues that come out of what we now know. One, you have a former Deputy Assistant Undersecretary of Defense from Chris Mellon saying, flatly accusing the Air Force of essentially being uncooperative. And he actually goes on to say there are more serious cases that the Air Force did not report, including, it now seems, cases where US and/or Canadian Air Forces scrambled fighter jets to intercept U.A.P. This is an allegation from a former very senior defense official who is saying the US Air Force is being uncooperative. Now, roll forward from the context of what he's talking about there, which is a broad range of incidents over the roughly 20 years since 2004. The clear messaging that is coming through, the contradictions are coming from, drumroll, largely the US Air Force, NORAD. You had Major Olivier Gallant, the spokesman for NORAD, declaring on Sunday, very shortly after the shootdown, we know what these objects are. The arrogance of NORAD, the arrogance of the US Air Force, that subsequently the public were told they're not allowed to know.
Fascinating, right? So with the Nimitz incident, the Air Force had its own people in place, their own forces doing their own maneuvers, and they had data on the Tic Tac and the Tic Tacs, because it was really a multi-day thing, a week or two. They were seeing these objects go, from the lower Earth orbit or upper Earth atmosphere, however you want to say it, to sea level, sometimes within a second or two or less. And there was at least 100 of these objects. That's according to Kevin Day. So anyway, and the Air Force knew about it. They had their own guys. They had their own sensors. They have their own data. And they did not share that with anybody, which, should come as no surprise, really. I mean, the Air Force is the, institute or the entity of Area 51. Like I say, it would be shocking if they actually ponied up, right? The Air Force is in deep with the control group, with whatever the government's project is or involvement with the phenomenon in whatever way they're doing it. According to Bob Lazar, they were reverse engineering alien technology and actual ships, not just tinkering with them, but actually getting them to fly. Now, of course, I have my own thoughts on that, and I've shared them with some of you guys. I don't know if you've seen those videos or not, but I think that Bob's memory has actually been altered. He was given a pine-scented drink when he went to work at S4. He was also forced to undergo hypnosis. I believe this probably made him more susceptible to having his mind altered or wiped, so that he didn't actually remember the depth of his involvement at S4, because he has a recovered memory years later when he remembers actually interacting with a being there. And I believe that he probably has more memories yet to be recovered of similar things, because as I've reported on this channel numerous times, there is a lot of evidence, whistleblowers that have come forward to suggest that the Air Force was working with some subset of the phenomenon. And by that, I mean the beings. The beings have been seen again and again, not just at Area 51, but at other installations. It does muddy the waters, however, that Bob Lazar's W-2 is from the Navy. Yeah, so assuming that's correct, and I don't see why it wouldn't, because if he's trying to fabricate this, case, this series of events, he would have put the Air Force down, not the Navy, because that is just so perplexing and doesn't even make any sense. It casts further shade on his story, so I don't think he would have added that wrinkle. But on this channel, I have listed time after time the Air Force has been caught basically colluding or working with the phenomenon, covering stuff up. There's people like Charles Hall, who saw the tall whites actually living in a small colony at Area 51. There are remote viewers that have actually seen levels underground below Area 51 and actually observed beings there interacting with the military. There are also whistleblowers that have said much the same thing, whether at Area 51 specifically or other installations. I recently did a piece on Don Phillips, the Lockheed Skunk Works engineer, who worked on the SR-71 Blackbird in the early 60s, and he had buddies, fellow Skunk Work engineers, who were working with the beings, and they would tell him about it. And they were specifically, the beings were helping the humans develop a training device so that human pilots could learn to operate UFOs or UFO-like vehicles. And it was shortly after that that the ARVs began to be seen, the human-flown and possibly human-created UFOs. People would see UFOs land, and instead of aliens coming out, humans would coming out. Not, the Nordics or the Pleiadians or whatever you want to call the human-looking aliens, but guys in Air Force suits. So yeah, the Air Force has been involved in this forever, and they're never going to come forward unless they're compelled to come forward. They're going to have to be dragged kicking and screaming, and even then they're not going to want to come forward. And why would they? They are in bed with the phenomenon. And I'm sure they're not alone. I'm sure the Navy's got stuff to hide. I'm sure the Army's got stuff to hide. I'm sure there's, the whole government is riddled with programs and sub-programs and competing interests and factions, and who knows what's going on. But whatever's going on, you can believe that the Air Force has a huge piece of that pie. And I applaud Chris Mellon and Ross Coulthart for giving them hell and, really putting it out there that the Air Force is actually holding back data that we know they possess. I mean, we're not talking about them working with the beings or anything else that has come out via more non-traditional routes. We're talking about, they were there when these UFOs were there, and we know they had that sensor data, and they're not coming out with it. Ross also talks about, of course, how, we, the NORAD, intercept UFOs, at a regular pace. I've already made a video on that, so I won't touch on that here, but it is worth noting and repeating to some extent. We intercept UFOs, we fire at UFOs, we escort some UFOs, and we work with some of the beings. Are we working with some beings against other beings? Who knows? But you can see that it's a whole big can of worms at least, and that's why they don't want to talk about it. That's why they don't want to reveal anything. If they reveal anything, they're afraid all the worms are going to come out, and and they just might. And so they're going to be very selective in what they disclose, and stuff is going to come out very slowly. If they have their way, and maybe they can be compelled to release information quicker. I really hope so. But we'll see. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Please give this video a big thumbs up. I really appreciate it. Please smash the subscribe button and the bell to be notified of future videos. Please join me on Facebook and Twitter. Links are below. Until next time, this is Jack with Cosmic Roads signing out.